I've been to the rubbish tip, or the garbage dump if you're an American. The reason I was at the garbage tip, or rubbish tip, whatever you want to call it, not exactly sure how I'm going to title this video considering my large American audience. If you haven't seen the previous video, I was building out this studio and moving into this entire house. So there's a lot of cardboard waste to take care of, especially since a lot of it had been in storage for about 7 months. So that all went to the, let's call it the transfer station, just to simplify things. And it's amazing how much you can fit into a Subaru Forester, just as a bit of a tangent. Every single bit of cardboard I needed to take to the transfer station, I got it in there. Such an amazing vehicle. Anyway, so I got there, I offloaded my cardboard, and in Australia, or at least my amazing state of Western Australia, where I live, there's a very big emphasis on electronic recycling at the moment. So, you know, your old TV or whatever, it doesn't go into landfill, they properly recycle it. I don't actually know what they do with it, but the point being, there is a separate corner of the transfer station you go to, and that's where you get rid of all your old electronics. So as I was leaving the location, I went past that little corner, which is actually just like a big basket sort of thing, big metal basket, I guess you should call it, filled to the brim, full of old computer monitors and whatever else. On the ground, in front of it, was this guy. Now, you're not supposed to take stuff from the tip, but I'll be honest, I have in the past. The last time I went there, I found a PlayStation 1 with Crash Bandicoot in it. In the same bag, there was also a bunch of porn on DVD. I didn't take the porn, promise, but I did take the PlayStation. While I was there, when I saw this, there was a guy there, like a worker, and he was a pretty serious dude, pretty serious about his job. Fortunately for me, the electronic recycling point was behind a shipping container, and I spotted it as I was driving out. And I looked in my rear view mirror, and I saw that he'd turned around to go help someone. So I did a very strategic maneuver with the Forester. I backed into that little area, pretending that I was going to dump off some old crap. Instead, I flung the boot open, threw this in, not literally, obviously, probably quite fragile, and took off, screeching as I went out. No, not really. But all in all, it was the perfect crime. Now, the thing is, I know nothing about Apple computers. I've never owned Apple computers. Up until recently, I've never owned an Apple product. I do have an iPhone, which I bought for some types of filming I do. I don't actually use it as my phone. I'm totally a Windows Android guy, as cliched as that is these days. So I haven't done any research into this. I don't really know how to work on them. Basically, this video will just be me winging it, seeing if I can bring it back to life. I don't know anything about it. I think it might be from around 2009, but that's all I know. All I know, it's an Apple Pro, and I think I know that because it says that on the back. No, it doesn't. I think I just knew that it was an Apple Pro or a Mac Pro. See, maybe I don't really know that much because I don't even know what it's called. Anyway, let's open it up and take a look. Okay, so let's check out the condition first. So what do we got here at the front? We got power, a couple of USBs, headphone jack. I believe there's a FireWire, I think, from the good old days, the dark ages. Potentially 2 disk drives. Whether there's actually a disk drive there or those are just plates, just filler plates, I don't know. It is a little bit bunged up, you know. I don't know if you can really see that on camera, but, you know, scrapes, probably not too surprising for sort of something from about 15 years ago. And plus it has been to the tip, we can't forget that. The other side looks more or less the same. Yeah, there is like little pock marks and stuff along the side here now that I look at it. This may have even been from when I threw it into the boot of my car. There was a rubber mat though, so maybe not. Let's have a look at the back. This thing's really heavy, by the way. So, as you can see, no graphics cards. So, I do have quite a few graphics cards. Do they work with this computer? No idea. We'll find out. Otherwise, you just got the other I/O you can expect. Again, USB, Firewire, I think. Got two optical ports there, an in and an out. That's interesting. And then some LAN ports down there. So, what does it say here? Model number, lots and lots of letters. I will do some research on this soon. Oh no, it does say Mac Pro. Okay, so for some reason I was too lost in all the numbers and letters at the top. But it does say Mac Pro 2.26 and then a bunch of gibberish after that. So yeah, and it's a bit dusty, but that's okay. So luckily there's no lock on the, what do you call that, a Kensington lock or something? That just opens up. All right, let's pull it back around. And this comes off like this. So obviously this is not the first time I've looked inside. I have at least done that. No point in me lying to you about that. Okay, what can we see? Not a whole lot. So we can see the motherboard in there, and there is an Intel processor, and it's in a shadow. Again, just a bunch of letters and numbers, so I can probably look up the code for that and find out exactly what that is. There's no RAM here. That's a fan. It looks like there might be one disk drive, actually. Kind of hard to see from here, but sort of just looking through the gap of that hole there. So I think we can, yep, do this. And this whole thing is like modular. It's like no desktop PC I've ever worked on. So this, I think it just comes out. Oh, yep, here we go. We've got these massive heat sinks here. And oh, there is RAM. Oh man, this thing's heavy. So we do have a couple of RAM chips there. So what are those? It looks like they're 16 gigabytes. So it looks like there's 32 gigabytes of RAM in this bad boy. If that's what the 16G means anyway. Just give you a close up on that. Hopefully that focuses. Come on, there we go. OWC. That is not a brand I've heard of. So let's chuck that back in. Is there anything else to see in the void? Not really. Just the bottom of the motherboard, and then there's another fan down there. So let's slide that back in. The build quality is very nice. I will give Apple that. So, hello again. This doesn't feel so bad being on the floor when you know you own it and you're not renting it. Well, I don't own it yet. My name's on the title. Let's plug a power cable in, which I have not done, I promise, and see what happens. Okay, doesn't use a bespoke power cable, that's nice. Okay, she is armed, potentially ready to go. Hopefully there's a light or something. I guess the fan would turn on. We got nothing. Absolutely nothing. Is there a main switch somewhere? No. Power board's definitely turned on. Well, that's yeah, I'm lost for words. Let's have a look. Well, that hardware is definitely plugged in. Looks like it. Yeah, that's not a good start. Don't tell me the power supply is kaput. I started with the simple stuff. I removed and reinserted the RAM sticks. No luck. I then turned my attention to the coin cell battery on the back plane board. Okay, battery hasn't leaked. Let's see if we're getting 3 volts. Okay, this battery is dead. Oh, wait a minute. No, dead. Very dead. We're getting about 260 millivolts. Okay, found a new battery. For the sake of comparison, 3.3 volts, as expected. Can't see any indicator lights or anything. Sometimes when I plug it in, I do hear a bit of a, like a kind of a sort of sound, when you plug something in. Doesn't really sound like that, but you sort of get what I'm saying. What does this button do? Nothing. Just like this computer currently. Troubleshooting continues. Okay, this is going to be awkward to film, but one thing I've noticed by mucking around is that there actually is a bit of life on the motherboard when you first plug in the power cable, which I couldn't see before. So we have that red light. And also, I don't know how I'm going to do this, film this without getting in the way. If we, as I just contort myself into position, where's that button? If I hold down the button, and then plug it in. I don't know how I'm going to do this without getting in the way. The light stays on. Okay. Focus over here. Come on. I guess it doesn't matter if it focuses or not. Oh, this is really awkward. My pain is your entertainment. And that will stay on as long as my finger stays on the button. And that light is in the top left there. So when I let go of the button, oh, it stayed on this time. It didn't stay on last time I did this when the camera wasn't rolling. Yeah, okay, that's a development. Glad I got that on video. Let's see if there's any sort of indication of what that light means. So excuse my head. It says, oh god, my eyesight's getting shit. Something to do with the CPU. Yeah, both those lights, I can't quite read what it says, but it's something to do with the CPU. So maybe we've got a bung CPU. I don't know. Interesting that light stays on now. Too bad it doesn't do anything still, but it's an improvement. Yeah, I don't know. I'll keep at it and let you know what I find out. The next day, I gave everything a good dusting. I started with the processor board, including the RAM slots. I then opened up the top end, confirming there was a single DVD drive. I did what I could with the power supply, but looking up other videos online, it appears to be annoying to remove. And will the lack of dust fix anything? No. I then found a service manual online. They gave a bunch of steps for troubleshooting no power. First, I tried to turn it on without the processor tray. Those two red LEDs that flash are normal, by the way. They're labelled as OVTMP CPU A and B, which, on the surface, would be a cause for concern. But apparently, they're supposed to flash when the power cable is plugged in. And if they didn't, it would actually be a sign that there's a problem with the power supply or the backplane board. The service manual then instructs you to push the button near those LEDs, which I somehow didn't notice previously. This should illuminate the 5V standby LED, which it did. This is further great news, showing that the power supply is at least providing 5V to the backplane board. The next step is to test the tower with the processor board, but without the processors and RAM installed. Yeah, this bad boy is rocking dual processors. Removing the RAM is easy enough, but the heat sinks are held on by hex screws that are far down tiny holes. Nothing I had was long or skinny enough to remove them. One Bezos delivery later, and I had a suitable hex key that was long enough. I wasn't quite expecting the CPUs to be stuck to the bottom of the heat sinks. The diagrams in the service manual show them as having latches, but these were on later models. I then gave everything a courtesy spray of wind, I reinserted the board, and nothing. From here, the service manual does say to jump 2 solder pads instead of pushing the power button, but this also did nothing. Kind of looks to me like the traces have pulled up. Hard to film, but this is what I was talking about. These 2 pads here are the ones to jump. More on this later. Fresh house, fresh brush. Can you tell which one's which? No, I wasn't brushing my teeth. I decided to give the processor board a good going over with isopropyl alcohol. It couldn't hurt. I then tried just processor A and a single stick of RAM. But as like the other times, nothing. I tried with both sticks of RAM separately too. It was time to go deeper. I removed this fan and resetted the connections near it. I then removed the processor cage so I could get closer to the backplane board. This involves a bunch of screws, both Phillip head and hex, and 2 fans being clipped out of position. There's also a few connectors for the fans that also need to be disconnected. Finally, I had a good look at the backplane board. Those solder pads I was concerned about before, yeah, totally fine. I also checked that the battery was making a connection. And indeed it was. I did notice that it had dropped to just below 3 volts however. It was reading 3.3 when I pulled it out of its packaging. I'm not sure if I should be concerned about that or not. I also spotted some rust on the ground plane at the rear of the case. Has this computer been left out in the elements? I then gave it some more air, followed by a dash of IPA. I then turned my attention to the front panel. I verified the button was working with my multimeter, and then checked that all the connectors were making a connection. A separate section of the service manual states that this needs to be disconnected in order to jumpstart the tower, which wasn't mentioned in the troubleshooting steps I was following earlier. It seems I didn't film this, but the computer still made no effort to turn on. It may not seem like it from the editing, but this footage was filmed over several weeks, with lots of research in between and other projects running in tandem. It got to the point where I could only find one more thing to try, since modules for this machine seem non-existent on the second-hand market in Australia. It appears the power supply and backplane board are okay, so what's a man supposed to do? I'm going to put CPU B into the CPU A slot. Theoretically they should be the same processor, and I'm not going to put anything in B. Maybe the processor in CPU A is what's been stopping this thing from booting up all along. After this, I don't know man, I don't know what to do. So, as I said I would, processor B was stuck into the processor A slot. I reinserted the tray, plugged in the power cable, and... fuck. Oh, well, it was kind of cold when I started this project. I think I'm wearing a jumper in the first clip of the video. It is now warm. You can see that I'm now wearing a t-shirt and shorts. Not that much time has transpired, but it's suddenly spring. Spring seemed to come a couple of weeks late, as per usual. Anyway, enough about the weather. This Mac Pro Mac doesn't work. Oh, how good would it have been if it just like fired up just then? Like totally unexpectedly. But no, it doesn't want to do that. It's basically a big huge metal paperweight at the moment. Possibly a footstool. It's not even very good at that. Pretty disappointing. And I hate to release a video that is a failure, but you may have seen a couple of videos ago, I did release a compilation of all my failed projects over the years. And that's just given me a little bit more, I don't know, confidence to just release a failure, because that's the reality of life. That's the reality of everything I do on these YouTube channels. Not everything works out. And maybe it's more about the journey, but I'm sure a lot of you will be disappointed that there is no outcome. Having said that, I've made it very clear in this video that I am an Apple novice. I've worked on lots of computers over my life, all of them Windows based. I pulled apart my first desktop computer and put it back together again when I was like 12 years old. It was like an old Windows 95 or Windows 98 computer. I got it off my neighbor. I traded him a DVD burner for it. It's sometime, you know, in the early 2000s. But I've had no such luck with this computer, and I can imagine that there'd be plenty of people watching who do have such luck. So look, if you have any advice, anything you think I should try, by all means, let me know. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this yet, but I would like to keep it as an Apple computer because I've never had one before. I just kind of want an Apple desktop to play around with, and something that I've picked up for free from the tip is I feel like, as far as I go about things, that's a pretty good way to get into new types of hardware. Alternatively, do you have any other cool projects which you think would suit this computer? I know a lot of people use these cases to just build desktop PCs because they are a really cool case. And I am in need of like a NAS server. I've been meaning to build one because this computer here, which I think is just out of frame, that is full of very slow but very large hard drives that I use for archival. I don't actually edit off them or anything like that, but I feel like they collectively slow down the computer a little bit. Like when I open like File Explorer, you can hear them go, you can hear them all fire up, you know, because they spend most of the time being dormant, and it just makes File Explorer freeze for a second. So it'd be good to move all that storage out of the computer into something else. So maybe this could be a really cool NAS. I don't know. But like I said, I would be very keen to keep it Apple. So if you have any recommendations, please let me know. Any advice, feed it to me, because I want this thing to run, preferably as an Apple. So anyway, the waffle time is now over. Sorry again for the disappointing end. I'll see you in the next video, hopefully. Bye.